Good old JD Vance was on Fox News Sunday this morning and was asked about the polling that shows Kamala Harris surging. And of course, to no one's surprise, JD Vance just stuck his head in the sand further and claimed that it's all just the fake media's fault for using fake polls to stir up dissension and conflict within the Republican Party.
This is what we have out from some new polling out of the New York Times. They say Ms. Harris is now leading Mr. Trump among likely voters in Arizona 50-45 and has even edged ahead of Mr. Trump in North Carolina, a state Mr. Trump won 4 years ago, while narrowing his lead significantly in Georgia and Nevada. What is the administration doing, the campaign doing with that data as it comes in? I mean, these are critical states that you got to have a path to 270. Are there any pivots? Are there any, reconfiguring of what you're doing in the strategy? Because you talk about your message, but is it not landing?
Well, let me say two things about this, Shannon. First of all, the polls tend to radically overstate Democrats. We certainly saw that during the polling of summer of 2020 and summer of 2016. And of course, a lot of those polls were wrong when it came to Election Day. The second thing I'll say, Shannon, is what we have certainly seen is that Kamala Harris got a bit of a sugar high a couple of weeks ago. But what we've actually seen from our own internal data, Shannon, is that Kamala Harris has already leveled off. If you talk to insiders in the Kamala Harris campaign, they're very worried about where they are because the American people just don't buy the idea that Kamala Harris, who has been vice president for 3.5 years, is somehow going to tackle the inflation crisis in a way tomorrow that she hasn't for the past 1,300 days. Giving Kamala Harris control over inflation policy, Shannon, it's like giving Jeffrey Epstein control over human trafficking policy. The American people are much smarter than that. They don't buy the idea that Kamala Harris represents a fresh start. She is more of the same. It is doubling down on the failed policies of the Harris administration to give Kamala Harris a promotion rather than to fire her, which is what I think most Americans are going to do on November.
How does that not line up then with another poll we got out this morning? Washington Post, ABC, they're giving the vice president nationally a 4 to 5 point lead. I mean, those are new numbers. So if you think the momentum is not swinging or your internal polls are suggesting differently, every other poll that's been released has shown great momentum in her direction.
You know, Shannon, I think there are a lot of polls that actually show her stagnating and leveling off. Of course, ABC Washington Post was a wildly inaccurate pollster in the summer of 2020. And look, if you see the numbers that we're seeing and you actually talk to the American people, I feel extremely confident that we're going to be in the right place come November. We can't worry about polls. We have to run through the finish line and encourage everybody to get out there and vote. But our message is going to be very simple. If you want to get back to the peace and prosperity, the rising take-home pay, Donald Trump delivered it once and he can do it again. If you want to double down on the failed policies that have delivered higher food prices and higher housing prices, well, Kamala Harris has been vice president for 3.5 years, and I guarantee she's going to make the problem worse if the American people give her a promotion.
So
the thing we have to remember, one final point, let me just say one final point on this, Shannon, because I think it's important. Consistently, what you've seen in 2016 and 2020 is that the media uses fake polls to drive down Republican turnout and to create dissension and conflict with Republican voters. I'm telling you, every single person who's watching this, the Trump campaign is in a very, very good spot. We're going to win this race. We just have to run through the finish line.
There you have it. It's not JD Vance's fault. It's not Donald Trump's fault. It's all the media, the fake media and their fake polls. We're not at fault for anything. Oh, and don't you remember the prosperity and the peace under Donald Trump? Oh, COVID wasn't our fault. Us having terrible relationships with our allies and the EU nations. That wasn't our fault. That was their fault. They weren't paying their fair share. That's their bullshit line that they like to spew. Nothing is Donald Trump and JD Vance's fault. This is coming from JD Vance, the guy who's got a net negative favorability in polls. Of course, JD Vance is saying, "Oh, no, don't believe the polls. Don't believe the Kamala surge. Kamala's her campaign staff. Oh, they're so worried. It's chaos over there. Yeah, they're loaded with money. They're surging in the polls. Yeah, Kamala's team is really freaking out. I mean, the projection from this clown is just absurd. And also the balls on this guy to bring up Jeffrey Epstein. in interviews, like JD Vance, man, just stay away from the sex trafficker of underage women who your running mate partied with, who was all over the Jeffrey Epstein files, who just recently flew in Jeffrey Epstein's plane. Let's just not bring up Epstein anymore, JD Vance, but I mean, you do you. You keep continuing these just crazy blunders and then see how long it lasts, how long you can just blame the media. The whole point of this interview was for you to address why you're not reaching middle of the road voters, and you just continue to just put the MAGA helmet on and just slam your head into the wall over and over again. And then they ask you about it, and you're just like, nope, not our fault. The media is making me do this. It's like, JD Vance, man, you're literally we're watching you slam your head into the wall over and over again just on your own. What are you doing? It's them. They're making me do this. Just insanity. And then, for JD Vance to talk about running to the finish line, JD, buddy, I mean, come on, man. Look at you and Donald Trump. When is the last time you guys ran anywhere? So, JD Vance here, just continuing to just blame the media. Nothing is our fault, and we're gonna win. Every all the polls are showing that we are getting crushed. But no. We're not changing. We're going to continue walking down this path that everyone is telling us leads us to a cliff. Nope. That's the path and we're sticking to it.